In a world where money shapes power, one hidden system has quietly controlled global trade for decades. This is the story of how oil, war, and currency built the most powerful financial loop in history. In 2025, the world bought $3 trillion worth of oil. Almost all of it was paid in one currency, not because it was the strongest or most stable, but because of a secret deal made in a Saudi desert in 1974. It's called the petrodollar, the most powerful financial system you were never taught. August 15th, 1971, President Richard Nixon walks onto television and says, I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold. Here's what happened. Since the end of World War II, the dollar had been backed by gold under a system called Bretton Woods. Any country holding dollars could knock on America's door and say, I'd like my gold, please. And the response would be, of course, right this way. That arrangement made the dollar the most trusted currency on earth, but America had been printing far more dollars than it had gold to back them, funding wars, social programs, and Cold War spending. Countries noticed, and one by one, they started showing up at America's door demanding their gold back. So Nixon slammed the window shut. No more gold for dollars. The dollar was now backed by nothing, just trust, and trust was not exactly trusted. Then things got worse. October 1973, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel, the Yom Kippur War. The United States backed Israel with a massive airlift of weapons. In response, Arab oil producers, OPEC, hit America with the most powerful weapon they had, oil. They slashed production, they embargoed the United States, and the price of oil exploded from about $3 a barrel to nearly $12. Gas stations ran dry, lines stretched for blocks. Sorry, no gas today became the standard. So now America had a currency with no gold behind it, rising inflation, and the world's most important commodity being used like a weapon. Not ideal. America needed a new plan, a new anchor for the dollar, something every country needs. Something so essential the whole world would have no choice but to keep using US dollars. Enter Henry Kissinger. He went to Saudi Arabia with a deal. You sell your oil in US dollars, you invest the extra money back into US Treasury bonds, and in return, we keep you safe. We sell you weapons. We protect your oil fields. Anyone thinking of touching Saudi Arabia will have to deal with us first. In 1974, Saudi Arabia agreed. Within a year, the rest of the smaller OPEC members followed. So now, if any country wanted oil, it first needed dollars. Just like that, the petrodollar was born. But the real genius of the system wasn't just that oil was sold in dollars. It was what happened to those dollars after. Here's how the petrodollar actually works. First, oil is priced in dollars. That means if any country wants oil, and unfortunately for them, they do, it first needs US dollars. Japan wants oil, dollars. Germany wants oil, dollars. With one rule, America created constant global demand for its currency. Second, oil exporters receive massive piles of dollars. Countries like Saudi Arabia suddenly had a problem most people would love to have, too much money to spend domestically. So where did the excess go? Right back to America, into US Treasury bonds, American banks, and financial markets. This became known as petrodollar recycling. Third, America used that recycled money to fund itself. It helped finance government spending, kept demand for US debt high, and helped keep interest rates lower. See what happened? It's a loop. America doesn't even need to sell the oil. It just needs the world to keep using dollars to buy it. By the 1980s, this system was in full swing. The dollar's share of global reserves climbed above 70%. US Treasury bonds became the world's favorite safe asset. American financial markets became the center of global capital. America could borrow cheaply, run large deficits, and print money while pushing much of the inflation onto the rest of the world. Economists called it an exorbitant privilege, a polite way of saying an extraordinary advantage. But the real power wasn't just economic, it was strategic. The dollar isn't just money, it's infrastructure, global trade, banking, reserves, debt, payments. So much of it runs through the dollar system that getting cut off is like being removed from the financial internet. That makes sanctions incredibly powerful. If the US doesn't like what you're doing, it can restrict your access to the system your economy depends on. Now, what about countries that tried to move away from the dollar? This is where the story gets complicated. In 2000, Saddam Hussein announced Iraq would sell oil in euros instead of dollars. 3 years later, Iraq was invaded, and after his fall, Iraqi oil sales returned to dollars. Libya's Muammar Gaddafi proposed a gold-backed African currency, the gold dinar, to replace the dollar in regional oil trade. In 2011, NATO intervened, Gaddafi was killed, and the plan disappeared. Venezuela tried a different route. In 2018, it launched a cryptocurrency, the Petro, to bypass sanctions and trade outside the dollar system. It failed to gain traction, and sanctions intensified. To be fair, none of these events happened for a single reason. Each involved complex political, military, and economic factors. But the pattern raises questions. For decades, no one could break the dollar's grip, but that began to change. In 2022, after Russia invaded Ukraine, the United States froze nearly $300 billion of Russia's foreign reserves and cut major banks off from the SWIFT payment system. It hurt Russia, but it also sent a message to the world. Reserves held in the system are only accessible as long as the system allows it. Countries started reacting. China reduced its holdings of U.S. treasuries and increased gold reserves. Russia and China expanded trade in their own currencies. Brazil and China agreed to settle trade outside the dollar. India began purchasing some Russian oil in rupees. Even Saudi Arabia signaled openness to trading oil in other currencies. The numbers reflect this shift. The dollar's share of global reserves has fallen from 72% in 2001 to under 58% today. Central banks are buying gold at record levels. The Chinese yuan now accounts for around 2% of global reserves. Still small, but growing. And then there's energy itself. In 2025, 1 in 4 cars sold globally is electric. As the world reduces its dependence on oil, it may also reduce dependence on the system built around it. That said, the petrodollar system is still very much alive. The dollar dominates about 88% of foreign exchange transactions and roughly half of global trade invoicing. No single alternative, whether the euro, yuan, gold, or crypto, comes close to replacing it. But for the first time in decades, the system faces real competition. Not one dominant challenger, but many smaller ones. And sometimes it's not a single force that changes history, but the combined weight of many. If you want to understand how money truly shapes the world, this is just the beginning. Subscribe for more deep dives into the systems that quietly control everything around you.